1943. A windowless room at 84 Avenue F, Paris, SD headquarters. A British agent sits handcuffed to a chair. He has been searched 3 times. His pockets emptied, his shoes examined, his belt confiscated. The Germans are thorough. They have found everything. Everything except the 2 blades sewn into the lining of his jacket lapel. This is the story of Britain's smallest weapon of the Second World War. A knife so tiny it weighed less than 40 grams. So discreet it could survive the most thorough security police search. And according to Fairbairn's combat literature, deadly enough to cause unconsciousness in seconds if it found a major vessel. The lapel knife was never meant to win fights. It was meant to create a violent break, a moment of chaos, a split-second opening when everything else had failed. By 1941, Britain's Special Operations Executive faced a problem no conventional weapon could solve. So agents dropped into occupied Europe carried pistols, explosives, radio sets, the Welrod-suppressed pistol, plastic explosives disguised as coal, radios small enough to fit in a suitcase. Britain had equipped these agents with everything they needed to wage war from the shadows. The moment an agent got caught, all that gear just vanished. The German security police were pros at searching prisoners, the SD, the SIPO, what everyone called the Gestapo. They took weapons, stripped off clothes, and checked shoes, belts, and watch straps, anything that could hide something useful. They found it all. Then the interrogations kicked off. The Germans had refined interrogation into a science. Avenue F in Paris, headquarters of the SD in France. Prinz Albrechtstrasse in Berlin, nerve center of the entire security apparatus, with regional headquarters across occupied Europe. Captured agents faced weeks or months of questioning, sleep deprivation, beatings, water torture. The Germans wanted names of other resistance members. They wanted locations of safe houses and weapons caches. They wanted radio codes and transmission schedules, information that could unravel entire SOE networks. Some agents broke under torture. Some held out until they died. But almost none escaped because an unarmed prisoner handcuffed in a guarded room deep inside enemy headquarters has no options. SOE needed to give their agents one final option, a weapon that could not be found, a weapon that could be accessed even when restrained, a weapon small enough to hide in plain sight but lethal enough to create a single chance at freedom. They turned to 2 men who had spent decades studying how to kill at close range. William Fairbairn and Eric Sykes arrived at Station 12, Aston House in Hertfordshire, in late 1940. Fairb had spent over 20 years in the Shanghai Municipal Police working some of the most violent streets in the world. His body carried knife scars from dozens of encounters. He had studied every martial art he could find from jiu-jitsu to Chinese boxing and synthesized them into a system designed purely for killing. Sykes had worked alongside him training the Shanghai Sniper Unit. Together they had already designed the Fairb-Sykes fighting knife, the 7-in Commando dagger that would become the most famous blade of the war. But the fighting knife was too large. 7 inches of steel cannot be hidden from a thorough search. Guards would find it in a pocket, in a boot, strapped to a leg. So Fairbairn and Sykes went smaller, much smaller. According to Lieutenant Colonel Leslie Cardew, commanding officer of Station 12, the 2 men invented what became known as the thumb knife or lapel knife during their time at Aston House. Interestingly, Fairbairn's official service record lists every weapon he designed, including the fighting knife, the Koch spring baton, and the spike necklace. It does not mention the lapel knife. Some researchers believe Eric Sykes specifically deserved primary credit for these assassination-oriented concealed weapons. One collector reportedly owns a lapel dagger bearing what appears to be Sykes's Chinese chop, his personal stamp, though such private collection claims are difficult to verify. Whatever the precise attribution, the design was brutally simple, a blade between 1.5 and 2.5 inches long. No handle in the traditional sense, just a narrow metal grip roughly the width of a thumb. Some were double-edged, others were single-edged with a sharpened false edge. All were optimized for a fast, deep thrust, total length under 4 inches, weighed approximately 40 grams, lighter than a mobile phone, smaller than a pen. The genius was in the sheath. Made of thin metal or leather, it featured multiple small holes around its edges. These holes allowed the sheath to be sewn directly into clothing, into the lapel of a jacket, into a shirt collar, into the seam of a trouser leg, into the lining of a coat. The knife became part of the garment itself. Later accounts report that H.G. Long and Company of Sheffield manufactured most of the production run, and that Arthur Akers, a cobbler in the village of Aston, crafted leather sheaths. Some variants featured a small loop for a lanyard cord that wrapped around the agent's finger, ensuring the blade could not be dropped or knocked away. Several variants emerged. The standard lapel knife measured roughly 3 inches overall. The sleeve dagger stretched to over 6 inches, with a square section spike designed purely for thrusting. The most ingenious variant was the insole dagger, a curved 512-inch blade hidden inside the leather insole of an agent's shoe, retrieved by pulling a concealed string. All shared the same matte black finish for covert operations. All were designed to be invisible during searches. If you are finding this interesting, consider subscribing. It costs nothing, takes a second, and helps the channel continue these deep dives into British engineering. Now, back to what agents were trained to do with these tiny blades. So training schools taught agents to use the lapel knife with terrifying precision. At facilities like Wright in Scotland and Beaulieu in Hampshire, instructors introduced what Fairbairn called the timetable of death, a diagram of the human body showing the location of major arteries, the depth beneath the skin to reach them, and the estimated time for a victim to lose consciousness once severed. The carotid artery in your neck is just 2 centimeters under the skin. Fairbairn's chart says it takes 5 seconds to knock someone out and 12 seconds to die. The subclavian artery under the collarbone? Even quicker, 2 seconds to unconsciousness and 3.5 to death. Don't forget the femoral artery in the thigh and the brachial artery in the upper arm. Students drilled these numbers and practiced the motions until they became second nature. Lightning fast, instructors demanded. Your life depends on being faster than the guard reaching for his pistol. The thumb dagger grip involved wrapping the lanyard loop around the index finger while pinching the weapon between thumb and forefinger. This gave control and prevented the blade from being knocked away during a struggle. Students practiced on dummies, on sandbags, on sides of beef. The motion had to become automatic. Modern medical analysis has proven these timings were optimistic at best. Rex Applegate, Fairbairn's American Prot G, later admitted at a knife collector's show in 1987 that the timetable of death was not medically accurate. Its real purpose was psychological. Young agents facing deployment into occupied territory needed confidence. They needed to believe that even when everything else was taken from them, they still had a chance. The intended scenario was grimly specific: an agent restrained during interrogation, hands cuffed but some range of movement, a guard standing close. The agent reaches slowly toward their collar as if adjusting their clothing. The guard suspects nothing. The blade comes free, one strike to the throat or the hand reaching for a weapon. Not a guaranteed escape, a momentary disruption, seconds of chaos to grab a weapon, to break restraints, to reach a door. In a building full of enemies, that might be all an agent could hope for. Here is where history becomes frustratingly incomplete. Despite extensive searching through declassified SOE files, agent memoirs, and post-war interrogations of German officers, no verified account exists of a captured agent using a lapel knife against their interrogators. The dramatic image of a British spy slitting a guard's throat during questioning appears to be legend rather than documented fact. What the records do show is that captured agents fought back using whatever they could find. Frank Pickersgill, a Canadian SOE agent captured in June 1943, attempted escape from SD headquarters at 84 Avenue Feach sometime in 1944. According to post-war investigation by Vera Atkins using declassified files and testimony from German captives, including SD Chief Joseph Kiefer, Pickersgill attacked his guards with a broken wine bottle, killed 1 or 2 of them, then jumped from a second-story window, breaking his arm before being shot multiple times. He used an improvised weapon, not an issued concealed blade. Michael Trotobus, killed in November 1943 when German security forces raided his location, reportedly killed and wounded 2 attackers. The weapon he used remains unspecified. This absence of documentation does not prove the lapel knife was never used. SOE operated under extraordinary secrecy. Many files were deliberately destroyed after the war. Emder Foote, the official SOE historian, worked under restrictions so severe he was forbidden from telling his wife what he was doing. Evidence that might confirm operational use may simply have been lost. What can be said with certainty is that the weapon existed, was issued, and gave agents something no other military force provided: a hidden option, a final card to play. That absence of verified use does not make the lapel knife useless. It tells what the weapon really was, insurance you hope you never have to cash. No comparably well-documented German program for sewn and micro daggers has been identified. The WWII, the SD, the security apparatus, none appear to have developed miniaturized concealed blades for their own operatives in the same systematic way. Their approach to covert operations emphasized false uniforms, recruited locals, and signals deception rather than the kind of stay-behind sabotage that so specialized in. When the American OSS was created in June 1942, they adopted British lapel knife designs wholesale. The tiny Sheffield blade became standard equipment for American agents as well. The lapel knife represents something larger than its physical dimensions suggest. It embodies the philosophy that drove SOE from its creation in July 1940. Winston Churchill had ordered the new organization to set Europe ablaze. Unconventional problems require unconventional solutions. When agents face capture, torture, and death in enemy territory, every possible advantage matters, even one that weighs 40 grams and hides in a coat collar. At Station 15, the thatched barn facility responsible for final preparation of agents before deployment, tailors carefully stitched the tiny weapons into Continental-style clothing. Every detail mattered. The thread had to be correct. The fabric had to be correct. German searchers knew British manufacturing techniques. A single English stitch pattern could betray an agent, but the knife properly concealed became invisible, part of the garment, part of the agent. Today, original SOE lapel knives are exceptionally rare. The Imperial War Museum holds examples in their collection, catalogued alongside explosive rats and disguised coal. Auction houses occasionally offer pieces with varying degrees of verified provenance, though collectors warn that reproductions vastly outnumber genuine wartime examples. Surviving production records are incomplete, unlike the approximately 2 million Fairb Sykes fighting knives whose manufacturer was well documented. The weapon that was designed to be invisible has mostly disappeared, but the idea behind it that British engineers could solve the unsolvable, that even a captured agent was never truly helpless, remains. In the shadowed rooms of occupied Europe, in the hands of men and women who knew they might never come home, a 2-inch blade sewn into a jacket lapel represented something the Germans could never take away. One final option, one hidden chance. The possibility, however slim, of turning the tables on an interrogator and walking out alive. That was British engineering. That was SOE.